So stare across for nowhere, and drop the anchor, my little empire.
Hello out there, Internet. Thanks again for joining us on our course for nowhere. As always, I'm your host, the Media Nomad, and joining me would be my co-pilot for the day. We have fan favorite Ivy.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Ivy, you know what we haven't done in a while?
What?
Gotten super gay.
Yeah, we could totally do that.
We need to
I'm
go
always up for that.
Well, that's exactly what we did this week, is we are delving into Yuri on Ice.
Woohoo!
I had a lot of fun with this one.
It's a great show. And it may be a bit more mainstream than some of the things that we usually tackle, but it's also super gay, and we're usually into that, so.
I'm into that. I'm into that. But, not in a weird way.
Well, no. Just in a regular kind of people who like gay things way.
Right.
Yes.
I can like gay things. Well, I remember I was watching this, and my roommate would sometimes pass through the main room where the TV is, and she would just go, "What are you watching?" It's like I'm watching gay ice skaters. And then I've been watching it all week just to get through it. It's only 12 episodes. She comes through today, and she's just like, "How many episodes of this are there? How much is there?" It's like, it's not enough. It's never enough.
Yeah. I was so sad when it was over. I mean, like, legitimately depressed that I couldn't watch anymore.
So do we want to do what we normally do? Give a really quick, back of the box, what we thought about it, spoiler free, yay or nay, you should go watch it.
Yeah, that sounds good. So the main story follows ice skater Yuri as a current top figure skater, Victor Nikiforov, stops competitive skating and offers to be Yuri's coach. And so it follows the two of them as Victor tries to bring Yuri's performance up so that he can win the Grand Prix final.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty good intro. There's this not-so-great figure skater from Japan. He's not untalented, but he has mental issues that he has some confidence issues that stop him from doing especially well. And then his idol comes and offers to train him for this next year's skating Grand Prix, I think they called it. And what follows, it's this very internalized sports series. With this large, interesting cast, and it had me more on edge than pretty much any other series I've been watching in the last couple years.
Yeah, just a bare bones description of the plot doesn't really do the show justice. And calling it a sports anime, I don't think even really does it justice, because it manages to avoid a lot of sports anime tropes that typically make that kind of anime not very enjoyable for me.
Right. Well, I actually had some thoughts about what sets it apart from a traditional sports anime, but I will say, whether or not everyone should go watch this, there are going to be some people who might be a bit turned off by some of it, but I gotta say, if you're looking for something fresh, go check it out. If you're feeling jaded, absolutely. If you're an athlete, if you're any kind of athlete, go watch this. Because I'm sure if you're an athlete, you've seen all of the sports movies, and this is going to be something that comes at a lot of what you're doing from a very different perspective, and I think that can be valuable. So absolutely, everyone. It's 12 episodes. It's streaming on Crunchyroll. If you can steal a friend's password, something. Everyone has that one anime geek in their life. Go ask them and tell them you want to watch it. They will know what it is, and they will squee, and they will show it to you.
Yes, and it's absolutely worth it. Even just the animation is new and interesting and beautiful. and I absolutely am completely in love with the soundtrack. So I think it's worth it, really, just for the music alone. I would have watched the series, even if everything else was awful.
Yeah, so there you go. We're gonna be diving in face first right now. So spoiler warnings are up. Nothing's held back. Everything's on the table right now.
I guess we should talk a bit briefly about how much gayness there is in it and whether or not people, might be uncomfortable with that. From
The
my
answer
point
is
of
not
view,
enough.
not enough. It's actually not. If you really are uncomfortable with depictions of gay sexuality, there are a few things that might make you a bit uncomfortable, but for the most part, it's subtle and tasteful, with really only a few things that I think would make people uncomfortable. So I don't think people need to worry about that if they want to watch the series. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, for me, actually, I wasn't really kidding when I said not enough, because as much as they're all the men are gorgeous, except the Russian coach who looks like an anime Danny DeVito. Apart from that, every dude is gorgeous. There's nude hot spring scenes. There's There's a skinny dipping scene. There's all of that. There's lots of hugging, lots of hand holding. But at no point do we even. I don't think they ever kiss. Like there's never any like explicit like. It almost feels just like they're teased it the whole time, and then they just kind of leave us hanging with some of that.
Yeah, there is one scene after Yuri does his the free skate performance in the first in the China Cup, maybe, where Yuri gets off the ice and they flying hug each other, but Victor's arm is blocking the bottom half of their faces, so you can't actually see whether or not they kiss in that moment, but it's pretty heavily implied that they do.
It looks like it is, but I feel like if they did kiss that moment, they might continue kissing at some point for the rest of the series, and they never do.
Yeah, I have kind of like three ways that I think you can look at how Victor and Yuri's relationship is done in this series. The first one is the most jaded view, that they did this simply to attract a female audience and LGBT audience, and there's no other reason why they did any of the physical intimacy between the two characters. Which is probably the biggest criticism that I've seen, online and in forums from female and LGBT audiences, because they wanted an acknowledgement of the relationship, and we never really got that. And I think that's fair criticism.
I have some deeper feelings about that. For me personally, as much as it felt like they were stringing me along, and I did just kind of want them to just go over the edge and acknowledge it. In a weird way, the show seems like it's playing a much more complicated game than that. It feels like it's trying to split the difference between two different themes. So we have a running theme throughout the series of different ideas of love, represented in the way the two rival skaters, Yuri and then his rival Russian Yuri. They call him Yurio for clarity. They both have to
call him
Yurio. They've got to learn to understand different aspects of love. The Eros, the sexual love, and Agape, the more familiar love. And the relationship between Yuri and Victor seems like it's riding a line right between the two of those, where it's not specifically one or the other. And in a way, that's almost more interesting to me, because I've never seen a relationship like that between two men in any form of media. This is something I have never seen. And as someone who's a little bit jaded when it comes to what I watch, it was really interesting to see them explore that relationship.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my second thought on how you could view the way they handle their relationship. For the people who say they really should have acknowledged the relationship and they're clearly just doing this for viewership, I would say, we're taking that view through the lens of a society that says that men can't have physically intimate relationships or be very open with each other without it being sexual. That in the kind of society where people say men and women can't be close friends without it being sexual, in the same sort of way, you can't have this amazing relationship between two guys without making it must have been sexual. And even when that does happen in real life, I kind of joke about it by calling it bromance, that kind of thing. So I kind of feel like, well, maybe they're looking at a relationship and saying you can have real love between two people who can be very close and very good for each other, and it doesn't have to be a sexual relationship. Like, that's not required to have a really great, open, loving relationship between two people.
Right, and I really got into that. I think the closest thing we can have, like an analog or something to compare it to, is you've seen the Lord of the Rings films, Frodo and Sam.
Oh, yeah.
Where they are very close, and then this came out, those came out early 2000s, which was before a lot of the LGBT movement started gaining steam, and so there was a lot of ha-ha, gay hobbits, whatever, and to me it felt like more of a way to try to dismiss the relationship, rather than actually digging down and understanding it. So, and I feel like right now, we've come a long way since we have in like 2000. First time it came out in 2001? Let's say 2001 to
sure.
2002. We've come a long way in the last 15 years. And so now we're seeing more acceptance of homosexual relationships, but it's still not necessarily okay for two men to have a real sort of friendship that's not necessarily romantic, but it's very comfortable and very close, and it's something that most men would feel comfortable calling love.
Right.
It's like dudes dudes can bang other dudes, whatever, it's still some banging.
Right, yeah, like that's what makes it okay, I guess, and
right.
A masculine from the point of view where men always have to be masculine, manly men that only have, very
do
shallow
man
feelings,
things,
I guess.
And they do a sport, and they watch the monster trucks, and they drink the beer, and they punch the wild animals.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, even some people who maybe accept gay men only really want to accept gay men who pass as regular straight men, if that makes sense. Like they do the manly things. They're still manly. Like, oh, I'm okay with normal gay people, but the gays who like shove it in my face with their femininity, like that's not okay.
None of that RuPaul Will and Grace bullshit.
Right, exactly. And so I feel like you could see the whole relationship in Yuri as a huge step in a different direction for portraying non-sexual relationships and kind of smashing some toxic masculinity.
I'm always down for smashing some toxic masculinity.
For sure.
Well, one of the cool thing is that nobody really seems to have much of a problem with any of the male affection in the show. Because I feel like it very easily could have gone, these two men love each other, but society won't let them be together. That none of that is never really there, because from the very beginning, Victor, the pro skater turned mentor, he's super chill about everything. The very first thing the two of them have together is when Victor just up and goes to the hotel that Yuri's family owns and has hot springs, and he's just nuding it up in a hot spring, and Yuri comes out and he just jumps up and is just like, yay, I'm gonna be your coach now.
Yeah. Admittedly, Japan does have this tradition of bathing naked in public hot springs thing, though most people don't actually just jump up completely naked. Usually people hold like a towel in front of their parts,
Also, most people don't look like Victor.
Right.
Like, holy shit. I see why the show had to be anime. The show could never be live action because
Oh,
a
no.
body that perfect can't exist in reality. We had to go anime to make it a thing.
Well, actually, I did see a play once with an actor who was playing a Native American, and I was super impressed. I mean, every single tiny muscle in his body, like, totally defined. I was like, that guy must have, like, 2% body fat. That is insane. But, yeah, it would be very hard to find find someone to play Victor.
I'm not looking up images right now.
But yeah, and actually, that's another thing that I've seen people talk about is how actually in male figure skating, historically there has been a fair amount of homophobia. And if this story had kind of taken place in the real world, there would have been a lot of talk of, are they in a relationship, are they not, and getting a lot of, oh, that's gross, you guys are fags, that kind of stuff. So I think it's actually really cool that in the show they treat it as a non-issue. Nobody gives them shit for anything, but it's just totally put aside. And to me, it's almost like, this is how the world should work. It shouldn't be a big deal, like whether or not people are in a relationship or not. It shouldn't, like, gayness shouldn't be a big deal. It should just be like any other relationship and kind of treated the same way.
Well, that kind of brings me to probably my biggest takeaway from the anime, is that it's not, they don't have that particular obstacle to come up with. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that I expect from a series that wasn't there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like how there's a saying that in jazz, it's more about the notes you don't play than the notes you do.
Yeah.
Like in Yuri on Ice, they did not feel the need to try and force the relationship to be anything more than what it was, because they had what they wanted. They explored that. Nobody was coming after them. Yuri's parents, who seem fairly traditionally Japanese, were like, it's fairly traditional conservative. We're just like, yeah, whatever. There's this sexy young Russian who's here to teach our boy how to figure skate.
Yeah.
There's no persecution for that, which is really fun. There's no need to artificially inflate drama. Like, nobody's cheating, nobody's a villain, nobody busted a leg, and now they have to compete on like a sprained ankle. There's nothing that feels like they're there it's there to artificially pump up the drama. I know it's 12 episodes, but it feels like it goes by really fast. And I know I just finished the last episode, and the last episode almost feels like blink and you miss it. Some of the results, because I think in the span, I have to time this out, in the span of about 90 seconds, you go from the main character's rival performing to, here's his rival, here's his score, here's the awards ceremony, which is this big emotional climax of the whole series, and they kind of blow through it, and I'm gonna say like 90 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I was really rather surprised with how quickly they kind of blew through the facts of everything. And even at the very end, there's still some questions, like, they say something about, at the very, very end, they say something about Victor announcing his comeback. And I was not totally clear on, is he going to try to coach and compete? Is he only committing to one more year and has announced that after that year he's going to come back? Or, it wasn't totally clear.
No, they really weren't clear. And that's one of those things where I thought, like, maybe I just didn't understand. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But no, I looked at it and it didn't seem absolutely clear. Another thing that it took them their sweet time to explain was how the rules of skating work.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know I don't, skating's not really much of a thing I follow. I don't have any negative feelings towards skating. It's just not, a thing I learned the rules and moves of. It's not something I studied and understood. But at the very beginning, they explain that there's a technical score where every stunt is worth a set amount of points, but then there's also a presentation score, which is kind of like your poise and how you handle yourself and how you made the audience feel. and then you combine those for your final score.
I actually liked the placement of their explanations of how everything worked, because I felt they did a good job in introducing us to the characters and getting us hooked on the story before throwing in a lot of exposition, to catch us up on what's going on.
I'm not saying it should have been super exposition heavy, but I feel like a little more explanation. I watched all 12 episodes of that, and I still can't tell you the difference between a Lutz, a sow cow, and a toe loop, which were the three big things they kept talking about. Those were the three big moves.
It would have been nice to at least briefly have this one is the most difficult one, this one is easier. But I do watch a little bit of figure skating, and it is really hard as a viewer, even if you've watched several, even if you've watched a lot, it is hard to tell the difference when they're performing between what is what and why. It's very nitty-gritty technical definitions as far as I can tell. So that may have been kind of just too much to try to explain. But I think you're right, it would have been nice to have at least this is hard or this isn't quite as hard, kind of thing.
I got that, like, the most anyone does is a quad, which is like they spin 4 times, or they do a quadruple Lutz, or a quadruple sow cow, or a quadruple toe loop, and, like, they call them quads, and I think that's the max number of spins in any move?
Yeah, it's how many spins in the air. So from the time the skate leaves the ice, how many spins they do is what they're counting until your skate touches back down again.
And then they didn't really get into exactly how the deductions worked, because they said you would lose points for things like if you didn't nail a jump, then you would lose points.
Right.
Like, there are some points where you'd see a character would try and do a really complicated jump, and they'd mostly get it, but their hand would touch the ice, and they talk about how that was a minor deduction, but how they still got a certain multiplier. And
right.
There was one bit where Yuri actually full on face plants, and he still scores really high.
Yeah, I think for whatever reason, that particular spot running into the wall wasn't as bad as falling down. But another thing they expect you to know is that as the routine goes on, you're going to get tired. So if you put more jumps in the second half of your routine, that's more difficult than having your jumps at the beginning. And so you get more points. And that's what they were talking about with multipliers, is if you put in jumps past the halfway mark in your routine.
And then another thing I thought was a little bit strange was every performer only had 2 pieces. Like Yuri, he does one performance that was actually choreographed by Victor at the very beginning of the series, and that was the arrangement on Eros. And then for his second performance at each competition, he does another one with music that was actually composed by a friend of his that was titled Yuri on Ice.
Right. And if you think about it, this got me thinking about if you've ever watched Glee. The kids on that show, they're in the Glee Club and they do musical performances. But the thing is that it's a weekly show, and they have the kids do a new musical performance every week, which is completely unrealistic because the amount of work that goes into one performance is astounding. And so I was actually really glad that they kept it to just 2 pieces, because that's how it works in real life. You have to do the same routine over and over and over again, because there simply is not enough time. There's just not enough of anything to be able to choreograph more than 2 performances for a season. And so you just have those 2 performances that you do for all of your competitions that year, because there's just no possible way that you could have many more performances. Plus, the judges have to, I believe that they give what your performance is going to be and the things that you're planning to do, and they give that to the judges to study before you do your performance.
Yeah, I saw that where they had the announcer would say his first planned jump is a triple Lutz going into a toe loop.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, but then it was not uncommon for skaters to defer from that, because sometimes they may not like make a jump quite right in the first half, so then they'll try and double down and do a more complicated jump in the second half to try and make up for it.
Right.
But I will say, I kind of landed the same place you did, where I was watching it today. I just finished it up like an hour or two before we started recording. It hit me that this stuff is really hard, and they probably figure that it makes sense to nail that one routine, because if you're trying to relearn a new routine from scratch every competition, then you're probably not going to do very well.
Right.
That's not to say they didn't. It was the same routine every time, because every time someone performed, they usually added or modified the routine somehow. Like Yuri's, it got gradually more complicated as he went on. So by the end, he was nailing moves that only his coach was pulling off with any sort of regularity in the previous season.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think they talk about that you want to. Victor suggests that Yuri starts off with easier things, so that by the time he gets to the highest competition, he's doing the most difficult and most impressive version of what he's been working on.
And that, to me, is something that very much sets it apart, not just from sports series, but also from other shonen anime, is that normally the moral is, right out the gate, you have to work, you have to basically brute force it so much, and you have to be performing top of your game all the time. You always have to be pushing it. You always have to be on, and so there's not much flexibility in any sort of. And I did some sports, but not a ton. But there's now it's a little bit of flexibility, saying, relax. You can take a breather now. We're going to ease you into it. We don't want to push you too hard, too fast, and burn you out.
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense, but you never see that mentality, ever.
Right. Yeah, not another, sports anime. And I also loved how, somehow even though they're doing the same routines over and over again, to me, somehow they were able to make it interesting every time. I was on edge every time he did that performance, even though I knew the song, I knew how it's supposed to go, I'd seen it before, I was still riveted. I still, wanted to watch every moment.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before. I wasn't kidding when I said this show had me more on edge than almost anything else I watched, because part of the structure of it is that you don't need to get 100% of everything to do well. You don't necessarily have to finish in first place to continue, because I can imagine any with sort of like tournament-style anime, you're going to have, they need to place first in the tournament, and then they move on to the next tournament, or whatever else is going on. And anything other than a complete win is really not an option. But because of the way skating works, you can have certain errors, and the plot will continue. So you get to have things like, every time they jumped, I got tense. Like the third or fourth episode, anytime there was a jump in a competition, I would tense up, because it was never a guarantee that he would nail that jump.
Right. And that sort of brings me to JJ's story. I found JJ's character to be insufferable, and I think he's written to be that way. But by the time we get to the end of the series, he takes a major dive, because he's not used to being in the number one position. He's not used to being, to have everything riding on him, all eyes on him, expected to do the very best, and he just kind of crumbles under that pressure. And I really like that they did that. I like that they showed that even extremely talented, polished, performers and athletes, there's something sort of fleeting about their performances. There's a kind of thing that you have to hang on to, and it can crumble for really, not even very good reasons, and that's okay. I mean, you can get back up and do it again, and just do better next time.
Right, because with JJ's story, he kind of came out of nowhere. He was this Canadian skater, and then I think it was the second competition, he comes out, we haven't really seen much of anything of him, and he kind of comes out of nowhere, and everything he does is so technically on point that he just blows everyone out of the water without really even trying.
Yeah.
And
he's totally arrogant about it too. He has this mentality of, I am the best now that Victor is gone. I'm going to have no problem being number one. I'm the king of the ice, and nobody else can do it as well as I can.
And then he's projected to win, and then we get to the finals, and he goes to reform, and the nerves finally catch up with him, and I think he scored either the lowest or second lowest out of any of the main 6 competitors by the final.
For the first skate, he scores the lowest. I think the other skaters mess up for the second performances, and he ends up like 4th, but I can't remember exactly.
Mm-hmm. But they do say, he can continue on next season, and he can keep building on this. And that is another theme that's recurring in this season, or in the show, is that for a lot of these performers, they are younger. I think Yuri is 15, and
16,
then his
I think.
15 or 16. I'm pretty sure it was 15. But the main character Yuri
so.
is 23, and that's an 8-year age gap. And in any other series, it would be reversed, where the main character would have, at least some sort of age disadvantage against a rival, because that gives them the head start. But with something like figure skating, when any sort of sport like that requires that much perfection from your body, you only have this small window between like when you start to really develop and when your body kind of starts to lock itself down. So you have this small window, and you have Yuri from Russia, who's just starting his career, and he's already doing some phenomenal things. But you have Yuri, who's been largely unsuccessful. He's 23, so any season could really be his last season, because there's only so long he can be competitively viable. I know they treated Victor like an outlier because he was 27, I want to say.
Right.
He was 27, and he was still performing at the top of his game, and that's almost unheard of.
Yeah. And I guess this also goes into part of what was so compelling for me about the series is Yuri himself. He, like you said, he is older. The commentators several times call him a late bloomer. And he has those confidence issues, and to me, he's just extremely relatable. Like, if the series were only from the point of view of, say, Victor earlier in his career, to me it wouldn't be interesting, because Victor is a genius that can do no wrong, and that's not terribly interesting. But with following Yuri's story, since he's just kind of a regular guy, he's got to work harder than everybody else to try and get to where he is. And I think that's really relatable and very compelling.
Well, that goes back to how it differentiates itself from other series, because most other series, there's this young upstart, he's some sort of prodigy, and he's usually, even if he's kind of a screw up at the beginning of the series, he is performing well beyond what would be expected from someone of his age by the end. Look at pretty much any shonen anime, and that's going to be the case. Like, especially something like Naruto, where he starts out where I think he's 12 or 14 when the series starts, and by the end of the series when he's 16, and he's already one of the most powerful fighters on the planet.
Right.
And here we have, there's someone who's a bit older, they're more average, and that age is working as a disadvantage from all these young up-and-comers. I guess in almost anything else, Yuri kind of would have been just some throwaway character who they would put in front of the more traditional hero at the beginning of the series.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And so I like that they kind of made him the star. It's sort of, it reminds me a bit of if you ever look at a series from, like, say, the Star Wars movies from the point of view of one of the non-main characters, think about how that story would change. And I feel like they almost did that with this show. Like, they chose kind of something of a non-character and then made him the main character, and it was extremely interesting and compelling.
I can say I did definitely relate a lot to him, especially when it comes to confidence, because I know I still do this, where I'm a freelance photographer and videographer, and almost every time when I show up to a shoot, I have about a 4 to 5 second panic, where I just go, oh my god, what am I doing here? I have no idea what's going on. How am I ever going to do what they expect me to do? What got me here? I need to bail. And then, after, it takes me a few more seconds, but then I calm myself down and remember, oh wait, no, I've been doing this since I was about 16, and I'm 27 now, so I've got about 11
Right.
years of doing this, a lot of that doing it professionally to one degree or another. I've gone to school for this. I, study how to do all this stuff in my free time. I know what I'm doing, but actually knowing what I'm doing doesn't seem to actually influence whether or not I actually feel like I do all the time.
Right. Yeah. I sometimes play piano for my church, so I can definitely relate to those, feelings of, like they invited me here and I know they want to hear something good and I just don't know if I'm going to be up for it today. I'm going to screw up and everybody's going to hate me, kinds of feelings. So I think that's relatable for just about anybody who's ever been in the position of feeling pressured to perform, even if they've done a lot of practice and know that they are good at something. There's that doubt that creeps in.
Well, I know when I went back to grad school, I worked as a photo editor on one of the campus magazines, and so I was taking point on pretty much everything the magazine had did. I think I wound up personally shooting everything that found its way into the print edition of the magazine. The stuff that my staffers did wound up online, and I'd be doing stuff, and I'd be like, "Wait, I can delegate things to my staff. I have a staff." And then I would think, okay, we're going to need to put our senior person on this. And then about 2 or 3 seconds would tick by and go, oh, wait. No, I'm the senior person.
Right.
I'm the authority in this situation. So it goes from...
Is there an adult here?
Yeah, it goes from...
An adult here? Adult?
It goes from, oh my god, where's the adult? Oh shit, I'm the adult. What am I going to do? And, it never lasts too long. And I've kind of just learned to roll with it. And I've never had any major screw-ups to this point. I know it's just a matter of time until I have a major screw-up at some point in the future. Because at that point, it's just a matter of time till a fuck-up has to happen.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fatalistic view on life, but...
Well, it's just numbers at this point. Because if I shoot enough assignments and projects, by just sheer odds, one of them has to be a screw up by my fault or by some external force.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot of averages.
And you gotta just learn to pick yourself up from that and move on.
Which brings us back to Yuri on Ice.
That's another thing I liked about the series. Again, just reinforcing that you can fail, and it is totally okay. I mean, yeah, it sucks at the time, but you can pick yourself back up, and it's okay. You can just go up from there,
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a message that not even younger people, but just people in general, never seem to get nowadays. And I know I never really accepted anything from that growing up. Going through high school and college, and even going as far back as elementary school, there was always an enormous amount of pressure on me, and it always felt like do or die, and I was always stressed out, and I always felt rough. And even though that pressure kind of pushed me to do better, it wound up having some really negative effects on me emotionally through a good chunk of my life. And so just having that feeling that maybe it's okay to not do particularly well, sometimes maybe it's okay to fail. Maybe, it's okay to let this one assignment go for class. Maybe, getting one grade that's under a B at some point is, that might hurt your GPA, but, big picture, it's not going to be the end of the world. And just knowing that there is some room for error, and knowing that you can bounce back is something I don't think enough people get. And I feel like once that pressure is eased up a little bit, it makes the rest of it a lot easier.
Yeah. And I actually do kind of like how, in the end, ultimately, Yuri fails. He doesn't get the gold medal.
Spoilers.
And, spoiler, yeah. But we already said spoilers were up, so. And they don't really make a big deal about it. And in fact, that kind of allows Victor to say he'll keep coaching Yuri, and Yuri decides to stay in the game. And I think it kind of turned out to be a good thing. I mean, sure, it would have been nice for him to win the gold and end his career in a blaze of glory and all of that. But I liked a little better, I think, that, he could continue. It wasn't this crushing blow and it allowed Yurio to have a really
Yeah, he lost to
nice-
his rival. Like, he lost in
Yeah.
the final be-all, end-all competition. That was another weird thing, is they actually had Yuri perform before his rival, because usually it's the way the structure works, is that the rival shows up first, and they have this huge display of force, and then it's how does the hero overcome this, and then by some miracle they do, and then there's the big climax and it's over. Whereas here you have Yuri come out and perform, and he, for a while, was the highest scoring performer in the competition, and then the final performer is his rival Yurio, and he comes out and he edges this guy out by a score of there's a difference by 0.12 in their scores, so it was 300. It was 300 versus 300.12. It was just how razor thin this margin was.
Right.
And
it turned out they did it in a way. Normally, I would feel I'm a Pollyanna type. I want my happy ending, and I would have felt really cheated by that turn of events, But the way they did it from a narrative point of view, it still felt very satisfying, and it was still an uplifting ending, even though it didn't end exactly the way maybe us Pollyanna types might have wanted it to. And I surprised myself by realizing I actually like the ending better the way they did it than the way that I maybe would have wanted to do it if I were writing it.
I'm with you there, because for me it feels more realistic that he would have that happen. It leaves some room to grow, but when you think about it, if you look at how far he's come from the beginning of the series, and at this point, he sees himself as a washed-up failure. He's overweight. He thinks his career is over, and then he's had not just Victor come into his life, but all of these other skaters, and he's learned all of his confidence. He's learned to be more at ease with himself. He's learned to acknowledge the love of the people around him, and so whether or not he actually has the physical representation of his growth in the gold medal, he has all of that emotional growth that he's done, and that is in and of itself its own reward for him.
Yeah. And he does have a silver medal for a physical representation of his growth.
He got the silver medal.
Yes.
It's like there's a running gag on.
Very major accomplishment.
It's like there's a running gag on Archer that everyone dumps on the one character because he went to the Olympics as a skier and he only left with a bronze medal. He only left with a bronze medal. He talks about, I'm an Olympic skier. Of course I know what I'm doing. Like, yeah, you got a bronze. It's like third in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's so amazing.
And they use Yuri's growth and they parallel it with Victor's. And Victor's 27 now, and Yuri's 23. So it kind of implies that Yuri's got about 4 more years left in him.
Well, Victor is a bit of an outlier, but probably not very many years left.
Well, by the end, he's performing all the same routines that Victor was. So they kind of imply that his career will probably start shadowing his mentors. Sorry for the noise in the background here. It kind of foreshadows a little bit of that. This series is begging for a season 2.
Oh, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do it. It was extremely popular, and got a lot of critical acclaim, so I feel pretty confident that they're going to move on with the story, which honestly makes me a little bit nervous. Usually when I absolutely am completely smitten with the first season of something and the second season comes out and I'm kind of like, this really is not as good. But I'm hopeful they can, make the second season just as good.
I hope they take the same approach that Joss Whedon said he did when he was working on Avengers, where he wants to go deeper and not bigger. Where they don't necessarily need the scope bigger. They just need to focus on what they have and work on delving deeper into that. Because for me, that was one of the criticisms, was that they almost tried to make every skater their own character with their own, at least kind of mini arc. If nothing else, they have at least a backstory and something recognizable about them, which is fine. but at the same time, when you only have 12 episodes and you're trying to have that many characters, it feels like you're only kind of getting a snippet of everyone, and you're not really drilling down to the emotional core of the series as much as you could be.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. It would be nice to see some more fleshing out of some of the other characters, and going a little bit more into Victor and Yuri's relationship, and also maybe how they plan, if they do plan, to continue that in the long run,
They did exchange rings, but they were totally not wedding rings, guys.
Yeah, they were on the right hand, not the left hand, and they were definitely not wedding rings.
Definitely not
No.
wedding rings. Yeah, because Yuri buys the both of them while they're in Barcelona. He buys them each a gold ring as kind of this good luck charm / thank for himself and thank you gift for Victor. And people see them before the competition and they go, "Oh my God, you're engaged!" And because Victor's chill as fuck, it's just like, "Yeah, whatever, we're engaged. He's gonna win gold, and then we're gonna get married."
Yeah. And to me, he's so chill. The first time I watched through the series, when I was still taking the jaded view and thinking this is all just gay baiting, I'm like, clearly Victor is just joking. Like, there's no, that's just the kind of thing that he does. He's really chill and will just joke about stuff and doesn't care, But watching the series through again, I've seen some fans online say that they actually do completely intend that this is a romantic relationship between Victor and Yuri. It's just that they had to be subtle about it. They had to write it in a way that it could go either way, simply because, if you completely acknowledge that relationship, the anime immediately gets relegated to the yaoi bucket, and nobody other than yaoi fans are ever going to watch it. The other thing is that Japan still has a long way to go when it comes to LGBT rights. There's not been an official, nationally recognized gay marriage in Japan at all. And of course, Russia too has a lot of LGBT issues and no gay marriage. And so that the idea is the writers did intend for this to be a romantic relationship between them. They just couldn't write it overtly, so they had to make it subtle, surround it in jokes to try to make it to where audience members could decide to say, well, no, that's not the kind of relationship it is.
Which I would have no problem with them just doubling down and having them be openly in love. But getting all the way through the series and seeing them try and pull off this balancing act of familiar versus romantic love, this is something I've never seen before. And so for me, it's almost more interesting if they try to continue this balancing act and if they can pull it off, because it's really easy to go like, well, are they friends? Are they romantically involved? And we feel compelled to sort them into one bin or the other, and at that point it just becomes a type. But right now it's somewhere on the edge, and to me that feels more interesting because I have never seen that before.
Right. And it also doesn't feel like I have this problem in TV shows a lot of sexual connection between two characters and a sort of will they, won't they, thing. And this isn't that at all. It's something totally different, and I'm okay with that. There's not a lot of drama around, like, oh, is this a relationship and everything. No, it's kind of a non-issue as to whether or not it is a relationship or how their relationship is defined. But just let's have this lovely relationship that doesn't necessarily need any labels, and I really kind of love that.
Yeah, I like that too, because I feel like if they had bitten bullet and had just gone all the way, it's a romantic relationship, I feel like most series cannot have a romantic relationship without some form of drama. Somebody's jealous, somebody didn't live up to an expectation, something like that. And I feel like if they had done that, we would have seen something that we've already seen before. And because I know I keep coming back to this, but it feels so interesting And one thing it actually kind of reminded me of was almost an asexual relationship, where at the very beginning, part of Victor's advice to Yuri is that he needs to learn how to be more sensual when he skates, to be more confident. And he says, think of something that gets you, like, I think it was like aroused or interested, or what excites you. And he didn't think about any sort of woman or anything physical. He thought about his favorite food, which was fried pork cutlet bowls. And he decided he will be the most beautiful seductive pork cutlets.
Yes, the kind of food that just the sight of it makes men lose all their reason and want to gorge themselves on on that food.
Do a porkin'. And to me, that almost reminds me of, I've got some friends who are asexual, and they'll share some things online where they joke about how asexual people are more into food than sex. Like, being asexual doesn't mean they're like a gray box that is incapable of feeling and interacting. They have passions and feelings, and they love certain things. It just maybe not necessarily rubbing their parts with somebody else's parts.
Right. Yeah, and it's sort of Victor and Yuri's relationship sort of at times read that way to me, as far as, you can have, like I said before, you can have a relationship that is very close and very open and very loving without it having to involve sex. That is not required,
Yeah, so I very much enjoyed the relationship between those two. And I think early on, part of the piece they had written, I think they said it was a story about there is this player who went to this Italian city, and he seduced all the ladies except there was this one who turned him away. But then he finally won her over, and then he discarded her when he was done to move on to the next lady. And then Yuri, when he gets on the ice, he doesn't think of himself as this player. He sees himself as this very seductive woman.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I did.
And they even make a point to talk about how the costume that he wore was designed to intentionally be androgynous.
Right. And it was actually one of Victor's old costumes back in the day when Victor had long hair and he liked to play with that line between male and female. And so, Yuri decided he wanted to do the same thing and wore the same costume. And it works. It definitely works.
Yeah, and I'll probably throw a picture in the link dump to this, because I genuinely love this costume.
And I love the song that goes with that performance. It's great. There's a point at the beginning, just before the main part of the music starts, where he'll always turn to Victor and smile. And every time that happens, I'm just like, yeah, it's so cute.
They are almost obnoxiously cute together. Oh, wow, it looks like they've actually put out some clothing based on the show.
Oh, really?
Because I looked up Yuri on Ice costume, and I'm actually seeing people, I'm not sure if these are for sale or not, because I just loaded up the image search. But it looks like they've replicated like some of the hoodies. Not the actual skating outfits. Yeah, here we go. Sweatshirt XY have recreated Yurio's, looks like most of his fashion line from the show. His Russia hoodie and his tiger print hoodie.
That's awesome. Well, the cosplayers. I mean, it's such a popular anime. There's gonna be people cosplaying this.
Absolutely. And a lot of these, they're just fancy street clothes, so they're not particularly hard to pull off. I will say, I'll throw another picture of this in the link dump. You've seen Gurren Lagann, right?
Part of it.
Is it just me, or does Yurio basically look like they just reincarnated Viral from Gurren Lagann?
Yeah, I do see that parallel.
It's the same. They have the same build. They have the exact same hair color and haircut, and they both have the same fuck off attitude.
Yeah, all Yurio needs is the pointy teeth.
Right.
I do love with Yurio's storyline that he is another one that could definitely push the boundaries of gender. He's very small. He's shorter than everybody else, very extremely thin, and because he's 15, he hasn't really gone through a lot of the masculine changes yet, and he actually says at one point about how, soon his body is going to change. But at the same time, he's probably the most masculine character on the show in terms of attitude and
right, because his body is very androgynous, but he's very just out and out. Look at me, I'm the best. Grr. And I think at one point he tries to kick Victor off a bridge.
Oh yeah, he's kicking Victor in the back at one point. And of course, at the very beginning of the show, he's so antagonistic to Yuri. He says, "We don't need two Yuris in the same bracket. You should retire."
Right, he gets all up in his face.
Yeah, and Yuri describes him as a well-known, the Russian Yankee, which I don't think makes as much sense in English, but in Japanese, when you call somebody a Yankee, you mean that they're a street thug gangster type.
I take offense to that. No, I don't, because it's true. Americans having reputations being loud and belligerent? You shut your face hole, dirty foreigners. And their relationship was interesting because they are rivals, but as the series goes on, they get a lot less openly antagonistic, and they kind of recognize that they're helping each other grow.
Yeah, I think that was another relationship that really kept me interested, and seeing Yurio as growing in such a different way to Yuri, that I liked watching how he had different struggles. And I also kind of liked how they at first presented him as strictly a genius like Victor. There's nothing that's going to stop him. He's just already amazing. And then they dig deeper into his character and find, well, no, there's these flaws. There are these things that he needs to fix. There are improvements that he can still make, and that was another thing that kept me interested.
Well, at the very beginning, you see that he has one hell of an ego, but I think by the third or fourth episode, he's most he's got the ego in check enough that he starts to double down and start growing again. I keep saying double down. Am I just craving KFC? He starts to knuckle down and start practicing more. So timeline is Yuri doesn't do great. He goes back home to Japan to lick his wounds. Victor sees a video of Yuri skating to one of Victor's old routines. It inspires him to fly to Japan and coach this nobody and make him the top figure skater. Yurio, being from the same, stable as Victor back in Russia, is having none of this shit. Flies after him, and then Victor takes some time to train the both of them. And he immediately recognized where both of them need to grow and helps push them in the direction of how to do it. He's more hands-on with Yuri, but with the other Russian, he kind of realizes that he's going to be okay on his own. And so when you see Yurio get back to Russia, most of the ego and the attitude are gone, at least at practice on the rink, the ego is gone. And he goes back to his coach, says, I'm realizing where my flaws are. How do I get better? And they start training him in ballet.
Yeah.
Which is not that much of a stretch from ice skating. But when you introduce that one character who's basically the big one, masculine motherfucker, and the first thing he does when he gets back home is learn how to be the prima ballerina.
Right, yeah. Again, I do love it. I like the exploring of, differences between genders and how someone can be masculine and have feminine traits and, that sort of thing.
And there's not necessarily one masculinity.
Right. They even, I liked the character from Kazakhstan, I believe.
Right, his name was, hold on, I have the wiki page open. His name was, Otabek.
Yes. And I liked how they showed that he was not able to do the, graceful ballerina thing, and that he had to go through his own thing of, saying, what can I do that the others can't? How I'm not as graceful. How do I, parlay that into something that I can do and still be able to put out a great performance?
And what we see him do is that he comes off as much physically stronger than some of the other athletes, so he's able to jump higher and farther and get more force in his jumps. So he's
Right.
able to... He realizes he can't finesse his way to the top, and so he decides he's going to brute force it.
Right. And I like how they, I guess portrayed that as also a perfectly acceptable method. That there's no one way.
Mm-hmm.
That all these skaters had their own methods, their own ways of seeing things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, but it's not bad to try.
He even mentions, too, he didn't necessarily have the resources that a lot of the other kids did. He didn't have the natural talent that Yuri had. He didn't. There aren't a lot of ballet studios in Kazakhstan. They mentioned that he travels around a lot, goes to the States. I think they say he went to Canada for a while. But he wasn't necessarily able to get as much hands-on training with as much of a professional coach as some of the other competitors. And so, without that, he just figured out what he could do on his own, and he chose to maximize that.
Right.
Which is great. I liked him.
Yeah, definitely.
And then he became buddies with Yurio, because they were both both angsty as shit.
Yeah.
They run away on a motorcycle together. It's awesome.
Yeah.
They run away on a motorcycle, and then they go to a pretty landmark, and then they decide to be friends.
Yes.
And it's not even like they decide to be friends. No, they decide to be friends.
Yeah. And I love it. I do.
Yeah. What else caught my eye too was the difference in this is something I found in TV tropes. I'm sure you've heard of it. The red oni blue oni dynamic.
Ooh. Actually, maybe I don't know that one. There's so much on TV tropes.
You can kill days on TV tropes.
Yeah.
I will open up the page to make sure I explain this shit correctly. Give it a sec to load. This trope is about two individuals, or occasionally factions or civilizations, that are significantly linked together somehow, such as through rivalry, friendship, being siblings, coworkers, competitors, etc., that have different personalities, and with it, often different approaches to the world in general, especially whenever they might have be competing in for over. This is, of course, gives them something to butt heads about, since their manner of acting may rub each other the wrong way, and each is sure that the other is that their way is the way of doing things right. That it says Red Oni is associated with passion, wildness, and defiance. A Red Oni character is often more brawny than brainy, extroverted, enthusiastic, determined, and filled with zest for life. They are also much more likely to break conventions and rules than their counterparts, often an idiot hero, or in more mature pieces, the boisterous bruiser, and then we've just hit like 3 other external links that we could click over to. If a Red Oni is indeed noticeably intelligent, they'll still be much more wild and impetuous. And then they have the Blue Oni is associated with serenity, control, observance, and authority. And Blue Oni is more intellectual, proud, traditional, introverted, and cultured. Personalities often are respected by others, but also likely to puzzle or confound their peers because they're quite difficult to read and have a mysterious quality about them. So I think one of the examples they give was a dancer on the IMDb page, or not the IMDb, the TV tropes page. The idea of a dancer where the Blue Oni shows up and practices super hard and is a genius and is very precise, but is quite possibly far less emotional, where you have the Red Oni where they show up to dance every day and they're not nearly as technically capable, but they put way more heart into it, and so people seem to love them more.
Interesting.
So when we look at the dynamic, they are absolutely color-coded, with Yuri as blue, and then Yurio, the rival, as either red or yellow. In the very end, they actually flat out give him a flaming costume. Not like it looks like there's flames coming off a unitard. Is it a unitard? Tights? What is the word? Let's just say costume.
Costume, probably best choice there.
It looks like it's like that blaze of glory where it looks like it's got flames coming off of it. And so we have the loud, angry one, the loud, angry, passionate one is far more technically proficient. Whereas the more shy, intelligent one is conveying much more positive in the emotion category, making up for his poor technical skills. So it's very rarely you see those different skill sets divided that way. If I were to compare them to anything, I'm sure everyone's seen Bleach, where you have Ichigo, who's very rough around the edges, he's very angry, he's color-coded to have the bright orange hair, versus at the beginning his rival was Uryu, who wore a lot of blue, very clean-cut, very smart, had his glasses, and very precise. And so you had those two contrasting personalities. And at some point they can flush that out towards the end, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. Bleach is this whole other thing.
But yeah, it's interesting how they kind of kept the technically correct versus emotionally deep, but then also swapped the personalities behind those two qualities.
Then again, though, while we are talking about Bleach, it does kind of have a similar problem to something that Bleach has, where it's really good at introducing new characters, and they all feel very distinct. And even in the case of Yuri on Ice, the way they skate is very different depending on which one you watch. You can tell very much it's one performer versus another. And Bleach does the same thing, where it introduces these cool characters, and they're fun and they're interesting, and they manage to do a lot of development with a little bit of screen time, and then they're kind of drop off the face of the earth and you never hear from them again.
Yeah, and with Yuri on Ice, there's not a whole lot of way to get around that. It just depends on who's in the competition, you know. But, like, my favorite character was probably the Thai skater. Vijit, maybe is how you say
I think that was what it was, where he was Yuri's rink mate from way back in the day, and his big goal is not necessarily to win the competition, but he wants to have his own ice show back in Thailand.
Yeah. And
Fidget? God, if we had listeners, they'd be sending us angry comments.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Fidget. And one thing, I left you hanging with this because I texted you while I was watching this, is I figured out why this series feels so much fundamentally different from any other shonen or sports series. And then I had to go do a thing, and I totally left you hanging and never wrote you back.
Oh, yeah. I wondered about that.
Well, for me, the big thing is there is no counterplay. Usually in any sort of fighting anime or any sort of sports series, it's that we have two competitors facing off at the same time, and we see them building counterplay against each other. And so this is one style, this is this other style, and here's how they collide, and their way to answer each other. And because ice skating is, when you compete, nobody's on the ice at the same time. You have one performer, they go out, they get their objective score, and then they leave, and then the other person comes in and they get their score. And at no point do these competitions physically interact with each other. Right. And so most of the conflict when you're on the ice is not external, it's internal.
Right. Yeah, I like that a lot. And there's another trope that goes into sports anime that Yuri does not fall into, for which I was very glad, which is really dramatically describing every single tiny move made in whatever it is,
That's not just sports anime, that's every anime.
But, and also, really upping the drama of,
I'll eat the potato chip.
Yeah, crunch. And it's just, with this, instead, what they have are these extremely polished performances. You get to really enjoy them. And, yeah, they are having some inner monologue over the performances that can be a little melodramatic, but it's not on the same level as the multicolored scrolling background and the, somebody saying, oh, it looks like he's going to do the blah, 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 and, the whole thing. It's actually a lot. The drama is dialed back quite a bit from that level, and I really enjoyed that a lot more.
Which paradoxically, I was, like I said, I was more tense with this series because they weren't explaining every minor detail, but I knew that even the main character at any point he could royally screw up. I never know, is he going to make this jump? Is he going to be able to land this? And I'll say, he maybe managed to land this during practice once or twice, but he never did it in competition. And there are times where he completely fucks up.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch. You feel that. And they did a really good job with the Foley work, the sound work, where it's very clear. Like, you can feel that hit every time they land a jump or don't, and the way they animate it, you feel all that weight and that impact.
Yeah, and speaking of the animation, I really love what they did. I believe they got a former ice skater and ice dancer to choreograph these routines. Just the animation for the actual skating is so solid and enjoyable to watch.
Well, I know I almost didn't catch this at first, but they rotoscoped the whole thing. Which, for everyone, if you don't necessarily know animation terms, they video recorded a skater doing these moves, and then they took that back, and then they animated over it. I knew back in the day what they would do is they'd actually put the animation cells, these transparent cells, over an image of every frame of the video. So you'd have the frame and the reels, and then you'd hand draw over those, and then you'd put the animations together, and then they'd flow like the actual person did. And I'm sure they're doing a much more sophisticated version for this. I'm sure it's mostly digital.
Yeah, I read something about how it was rotoscoping, but it was a different take on it from what they normally do. I'm not exactly sure how, but it was some kind of a hybrid method, and I think it really worked for them.
I meant to go look that up before we started recording, because I like to come in with a little bit of back knowledge, but my tire went flat today. Evidently I hit a nail.
Oh.
I had to go get my car looked at today, and that ate up about hour and a half, 2 hours, so it was either start recording now and going without the extra stuff and just go through it, or just make you wait while I did more research. That, of course, no research is ever enough research for me, because I always try because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right, and I have a bad habit of trying so hard to make sure it hits a certain standard that sometimes stuff might not get out the door. So, I think at one point back in college, I was supposed to meet some friends, and I was using an electric razor, and it died. And so I was half an hour late to get to hang out with them, because I waited for the thing to finish charging, because I just refused to leave the house with half the face shaved, even though these were my friends and I knew they wouldn't care. It's no, I have to get it right. So I didn't want you on hold till 10 o'clock tonight going, "Soon, I have to do more research."
Right.
So I feel like that's most of the points I wanted to cover. I know we keep coming back to it, but yeah, Yuri on Ice, it doesn't feel the need to be overdramatic. It doesn't feel the need to label any of its characters. It doesn't feel like it has to do all of these tropes. And I feel like it's a much more fresh and strong series for it.
Yes, I completely agree.
That being said, I feel like they spread themselves too thin with some of the supporting cast. I don't dislike any of them particularly. Maybe I think it's the Italian guy who's way too close or possessive of his sister.
Oh, yes, that guy. Yeah.
That guy. Yeah. Apart from that, there were no bad supporting characters, but at the same time, I feel like we could have shaved a couple of those off, and then use that to devote more time to some of the core relationships, because really, the relationship between Yuri and Victor, and their own internal struggles in how they're going to move forward themselves and together, that is the emotional core of the series. And I feel like what we have is good. I want to explore that more. Not necessarily I want them to get more physical, or I want them to be sorted more. I love what we have. I want I want more exploration of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I did read something rather appalling online. I'm not sure if it's just a rumor, but some of the characters are indeed based on real people. And I heard a rumor that one of the fans contacted the Russian skater that Victor's character is based off of and told him that he should divorce his wife and find himself a nice Japanese man to settle down with. And although it makes me laugh, it is truly appalling. People, please do not behave in this manner.
Yes.
That is so unbelievably inappropriate. All I can do is laugh, because if I don't laugh, I might scream, and yeah. So yes, please fans, let's not get carried away. Although some of the characters may be based on real people, they are not the actual people. This is a show.
Right, it's like when people would send hate mail to the actress who plays Cersei on Game of Thrones because her character is so wicked that people send the actress hate mail.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear that? Like, you hear a thudding?
I heard a little bit of, like, a tapping noise.
I'm in an apartment, and there's a family upstairs, and their kid is awful.
Oh. Well, I don't hear it too much, so...
Hopefully it doesn't show up too much through it, so I normalize the audio and I do minor changes, but I certainly don't go through the whole thing and edit out a lot of the ums and ahs and whatever. You get the raw, Anna. You get the raw audio here.
Because
this is real.
This
is real. We know you want it. We know you like it raw and rough.
Oh man.
Yeah, because honestly, it'd be a lot of work to go do that, and also I can't listen to my own voice that much.
Yeah, it's always a shock for me to hear my own voice. I think it's a shock for most people hearing their own recorded voice.
Right. I wish I could do the Game Grumps thing and actually just have like an on-site editor, so I could just have the files and just ship them over and be like, "Oi, Craig.
Yeah.
Work your magic, Craig. We love you, Craig.
Yeah.
Make me sound sexy, Craig."
We need to make you a voice filter so that you can have your voice sound like Sokka whenever it's recorded.
We do. Well, I guess that's a thing nobody who's listening to the recording would know. We both love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I relate so much to the character of Sokka. But I never told you this, and then you started watching the series, and you mentioned, well, you were texting me one day that Sokka reminds you so much of me that you read all of the texts I send you in the Sokka voice.
Yes, because we don't know each other that well in real life. We haven't actually spent a whole lot of time physically in each other's company. Most of our friendship has just gone through over Facebook messages, so... And then whenever I would hear your voice, I would think, wait, that's not Sokka. That's all wrong.
And not gonna lie, knowing that you did that without me telling you how much I love that character, so it was just completely on you, that made my day, and it still makes me smile, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And so we were talking a little bit before we started recording that I'm worried that if we record too much, you're going to start reading things more in my real voice and not in the Sokka voice, and that makes me sad.
Aww. Well, I'll still try and keep the Sokka voice in mind whenever I'm reading your texts.
That would be nice. I would like that. So I feel like we've hit all of the points I wanted to while I was watching this series. I feel like there's a lot to cover, and I feel like we hit everything I wanted to hit.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, everybody needs to go watch Yuri on Ice. If nothing else, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, in both visuals and in sound, it's gorgeous. Just go watch it, please.
Production values are through the roof. Not a single bad character in the entire show. Feels really fresh, feels extremely unique. I know it's getting a lot of hype, and I know personally hype can often turn me away from a series. Do not let obnoxious fans ruin this series for you. Go watch it now before the fans can ruin it for you. Alright, so
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep. Alright, we'll catch all of you guys next time. next time?
Yep. Next time?
Next
Hopefully.
time?
Yes.
I don't know, I'd like to do, like, once every 2 weeks recording to get, like, 2 podcasts up a month.
Yeah, that would be great.
That'd be
And
fun.
anybody listening, if you've got something you want us to cover, let us know.
We hope, seriously, like, for a while, Ivy, you're my only fan, back when it was just me and DJ Kyber, and right now, Kyber's actually over in, Korea, because he's teaching English as a second language. So, my buddy is now in a different time zone, and it's harder to record. So, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
I have you, I guess you'll do.
I don't know if I count on a fan if I've been on the show anymore.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like an ego thing. It's like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the show that I'm on.
Right.
But I know
But yeah, anybody else who's listening that has any ideas, let us know.
I know at one point we got like one fan comment on one of the episodes we uploaded, and I talked to him, and he actually did a request. So we did like a little like 10-minute thing where we just pandered completely to this one fan. And if I start, if I can get my shit together and get these uploaded regularly, and if we do get anyone actually, paying attention to our show, I would love to start doing that again, because I thought that was incredibly hilarious. That our fan base was so small, I could go, that guy, what do you want us to do? Now we can do that.
Right. Yeah.
Alright, so let's sign off so we can talk about what the next thing in our lineup's going to be.
Alright.
Alright, until next time, not question mark, period. Alright, catch you guys later.